Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have a new review for you of the French line tank to Tier 6 Eraser BP44, which is now available with the Battle Pass. As always, we'll have a look at the tech spec, and we use blitzhanger.com for that. But as we said, it's available in the new Battle Pass, which is currently available in the game. And this tank comes at level 35. Now, you can play games and pass the missions to get there, but if you want to pay the money to get that, it's going to cost you around €27. So for collectible tank, €27 tier 6, bit steep. But if you supplement it with games, missions, then you'll get it for a lot cheaper. And the tank itself is a pretty decent tank. In terms of maximizing its efficiency, we would use pate, coffee and improved fuel. This maxes out its performance. I would run gun rammer, supercharge and refined gun. Why? Well, it has a very big 105mm gun. It has a long reload, so therefore I would use gun rammer, because for tier 6 it has a significantly long reload at 10.9 seconds. Even if you use gun rammer, if you use calibrated shells, it goes up to almost 12 seconds, 11.7, which is very high for a tier 6 heavy tank. Got 170mm of pen with AP, 223mm with APCR, and 54mm with HE. If you go up to calibrated shells, that goes up to 179mm for AP, 234 for APCR, and 59 for HE. Muzzle velocity is good at 1105 meters per second, and that's for AP and HE. 1382 meters per second with APCR. Its G index is 9000, which is not great, but for tier 6 heavy, it's actually okay. You can live with it. It's not that bad for tier 6. Its gun depression is 10 degrees, which is really good. And its elevation is 15 degrees, so therefore it has good gun alignment. And the gun depression is quite a good characteristic to have with this tank, because when we look at the armor profile, you'll see it has good turret armor. The tank does 37 kilometers per hour top speed, 10 kilometers per hour in reverse, so it's a bit slow in reverse, but it has an excellent power to weight ratio, really excellent, and it has good traverse. What does that tell us? It tells us that this tank is going to be a good brawler. Indeed, its only real drawback in brawling is that long reload, but you can also ram in this tank too because of this armor profile. And we're going to have a look at that when we look at the armor profile in a few minutes. As I said, its only real drawback is its rate of fire, but it can ram, it's going to bounce shots, front on, can face hug, etc. Also, that power to weight ratio gets around the map, so you can get to the game. Unlike some heavy tanks which are not mobile, you find it difficult to influence the game because you find it difficult to get from one side of the map to the other. That's not going to be a problem in this tank. Power to weight ratio and top speed makes sure it gets around the map quite adequately, and you're not going to suffer from lack of engagement in this tank. If we look at the armor profile, we'll see what we're talking about. Front on, this thing is savage. It has troll armor. It's going to bounce shots all day long. Look at those armor numbers. You can also side scrape in this tank. We look at a typical side scraping position here. Look at the relative armor numbers along the side. Dark red up there on the left hand side, and if you even along the turret, you're going to get bounces. So you can side scrape in this tank. You're going to get bounces on it off the front without even angling up, especially if you're top tier. If you're top tier in this tank, you can be a front on, face of the spear, top tier bully. It can be effectively like a tier 6 Tiger 2, just coming straight on into the enemy. It's almost impossible for a tier 5 or tier 6 tank to pen you. There are exceptions, of course, the big gun and the KV-1S. If you're unlucky enough to be up tiered, something like a smash and that, of course they're going to hurt you. But generally, being fired normal AP rounds at the front of this tank, it's going to get you a lot of bounces. You can see here what it looks like if you're a tier 6 tank looking onto this. Even worse if you're tier 5. In terms of tactics, if you're top tier, this tank can go front line. It can also brawl, it can get in your face, you can push straight into the enemy, and you're going to see that in the gameplay. If you're up tiered, then of course, as always when you're up tiered, you have to be a bit more cautious. But you have a few options. You can go, for example, with your meds because of that power to weight ratio, so you don't have to get down the heavy channel. You can support your medium tanks, and even if you're up against tier 7 mediums, they're still going to have lighter guns, find it difficult to pen you. Or you can support your own heavies, your tier 7 heavies, just be a bit more cautious and play from behind them. But the gun that you have in this tank, you can pen tier 6, tier 7 heavies, no problem. You've got great pen numbers, which is why I would recommend using gun rammer rather than calibrated shells, just to get that reload down, because for tier 6 that reload is very long, almost 12 seconds for a tier 6 heavy is pretty long, particularly when you consider that okay, it has a 105mm gun, but it's not a derp gun, right? You're not getting massive alpha rolls like 500 that you can get with the KV-1S gun. So in terms of engagement in the game, I would suggest that you want to have a lower reload because it can seem like a long time if you're waiting almost 12 seconds for a tier 6 heavy to reload. But despite that long reload, this tank can be a very effective tank. As I said, it is a great front line, front on, tip of the spear, full in your face heavy tank with that trollish front armor. But it can also be agile, mobile, get into the game. As I said, it gets to the gameplay. It's not isolated from gameplay due to a lack of mobility. That's certainly not something you're going to see in this tank. We're going to have a look at some gameplay now. We're going to have a look at a couple of games. First game is a loss, but I think it demonstrates the characteristics of this tank very well. And the second game is a win, also demonstrating the characteristics. So we're going to have a look at Supremacy game on Desert Sands. Now, I was thinking about editing this game before I showed you, but in actuality then I decided not to, because this has nothing to do with this tank, by the way, but there's a valuable lesson in this game for all gamers, particularly those of you who may be suffering from bad ping, particularly if it's the bad ping on either Wi-Fi or on your LTE or whatever. So if in case you're wondering what happens here, and of course you can't see the ping disconnecting here because I'm recording this game, right? So obviously I have good ping when I'm recording, but I got disconnected here. I got disconnected from the game, so I'm AFK here. Now, what I did was, I always do this if this happens. So I was on Wi-Fi, and whatever happened, the Wi-Fi connectivity wasn't working. So I came out of the game, disconnected Wi-Fi, went on to LTE, waited a few seconds for me to disconnect from the Blitz server, Wargaming server, and then I came back in and reconnected, and here I am back in. Okay, so I lost whatever, I lost a minute of the game, right? But now I'm back in the game and I can hopefully influence it and maybe even win it. Now we don't win this game, right? And of course that minute we lost, who knows whether or not that would have influenced, because I probably would have done some damage by now, etc. But who knows, right? We don't know what would have happened in that game. I wasn't in that minute of the game, I wasn't there. And in the end we only lose this game on points, by the way, because it's Supremacy. But I think this is a lesson. Don't just give up, right? If you have an alternative way of connecting, or by the way, if you lose a mobile signal but there's a Wi-Fi network, go and reconnect to it and then come back in. You need to make sure you're disconnected from the Wargaming server and then come back in, and you go straight into the game. And so that's what I did there. So just obviously that's not related to this tank or this review, but just just a lesson. Never give up. And I never give up. I'm also not one of those players that ever just puts my gun in the air if I think I'm going to lose. By the way, this is one of the first games I played in this tank. I was trying to test out to see what the 105mm gun would do if I clear him off with HE. As you saw, I didn't. So just don't even try that. So just go for your kill, as I should have done, as I should have just done as I did there. But I'm not one of those players, by the way, who ever puts my gun in the air. If you're going to kill me, and of course I often get killed, it won't be for the lack of me not fighting back. I will try to ram, angle, run away, do whatever, because sometimes you can make the enemy miss. Sometimes you can end up, winning games, etc. So I'm not one of those players that puts my gun in the air and just says kill me. If you kill me, it's because you absolutely deserved to kill me. And then I will tip my hat to you and say fair play, give you a good game, and usually a worthy opponent. Now, this game, as I said, it's a loss, but I'm showing it to you because it really highlights the good characteristics of this tank. You can see here that I'm going to bounce a whole load of shots from these VK3601s, and these guys have decent guns. You can see here double bounces from these guys, and that's just showing you just how good the turret is on this tank. I can bounce shots, so I haven't received a single hit yet. And in actuality, I don't really receive a hit until I have to give up this position, because I'm looking at the point score and I know we're going to lose. So I need to push onto them. I need to clear one of these guys. So I need to push on. Now, I thought my allies coming to help me here, and I thought, oh, okay, great. So maybe if we both concentrate, we can clear one of these off. Unfortunately, my team weren't very strong, and actually you'll see when we look at the scores that they hardly did any damage. But I just thought that was a good representation of this tank, because you can see there almost 2.3k damage, huge amount of bounces done as well. And maybe if I had a slightly better team, I could have maybe even won that game. Or maybe if I hadn't been disconnected for the first minute, maybe could have done a bit more damage. We might have captured the base and maybe cleared off a tank, etc. But if buts and maybes. But forget about all of that. It was just a good demonstration, I think, of this tank in action. Its strength as both an offensive and a defensive tank. Again, Supremacy game. This time we're on Canal. I've shown this before in games. If you haven't seen it before, I always go and capture this base from this position, and I don't knock down those wooden huts. If you see players ploughing through those wooden huts, they're inexperienced players. Leave those wooden huts in place, because it gives you extra cover, so it gives you extra concealment, keeps you unspotted for a while. But also, if there is a big derp gun on the other team that relies on HE, heat, or on upper tiers HESH, they can't fire through those wooden structures. So keep those wooden structures in place. The most frustrating thing is if you keep them in place and somebody else comes along and your teammate just plows right through them. They're there for a reason, right? They give you more concealment, and they also protect you from heat, HESH, and HE. Now we're going to see a very good example of this tank in play, and we're going to see a great example again of its offensive and defensive nature. So I'm adopting position here where I can side scrape. I'm also going to have a position though where I can, went too far back there, by the way. I got smashed from somebody over the other side of the valley. But you can see I'm facing up to 3 enemy tanks here, and I'm able to hold them all off, and I'm able to put damage into them. I'm able to bounce shots. Of course I'm going to take some damage. It's not possible really to hold off 3 enemy tanks, in this case 2 heavy tanks and a light tank, without taking some damage. But you're going to see here, firstly, the good gun handling in this tank. So I put a nice round right through the turret of the MT25 there when I have a small target. He's reloading. He's not sure of my reload. I get 2 bounces, keep my cool, keep my aim on him, and I clear him off. Now I'm going to see if I can push onto these 2. I'm confident in my front line. I front up to the VK, get another bounce, put a big round into his lower plate, and now I'm back into a defensive position. I'm showing them a bit of leg, see if they want to come out, see if they want to dance. Yeah, KV1 bites, clear him off. And now I've cleared off 2 of those 3 tanks that were facing up to me, and now I have a 1-shot kill on the VK, which I'm about to make right through his bottom plate. There we go. Okay, it took some hits. Happy to do that because I cleared off 3 tanks and still have, about a third of my hit points, and last able to clear off the SU-100Y. So I think this is a good demonstration of exactly what we spoke about in the tech spec and earlier on about the characteristics of this tank. When you're top tier, you can go tip of the spear, front line, in your face, balls out heavy tank. You can see I was able to side scrape, get some bounces, put a lot of damage in, and just go, you know, tip of the spear, taking the fight to the enemy, confident in the fact that your good armor profile is going to keep you safe. And you can see here, look at the medals that were delivered in that. So Master Gunner, again showing the decent gun index. Scout, very unusual for a heavy tank, but I'll take it. Steel Wall, right? Again, you get a steel wall, it shows you've got a good armored tank. High caliber, Top Gun, first class mastery badge, and what did we say? Over 2.3k of damage. So overall, a very good example of the strengths and characteristics of this tank in action. So let's have a quick recap. This is a good heavy tank. It's also a good collectible tank. It's unusual, something new for your collection. It hasn't been here before, so definitely worth getting. Has good gun, 105mm gun. Gives you good damage points, 310 to 400, which is excellent. Has great power to weight ratio, so therefore it's agile. It gets to the game, gets around the map. You don't have to play in one small pocket of the map. Rate of fire is slow. It is a drawback for it. It's 10.9 seconds even when you use gun rammer. It goes up to almost 12 seconds when you use calibrated shells. G index of 9k is not fantastic, but it's certainly decent. It's good for its tier, and you saw an action in that game. Has excellent armor. It's a top tier bully, as you saw in both of those games. You can get bounces, steel wall medals. Frontline, face hugging, brawl master. You know, particularly when top tier. I would use supercharged and refined gun to max out the gun handling in this tank, get that G index up. The gun depression and the armor are a great toolbox, so you can go hull down in this tank too. So if you like playing American heavies, then you'll also like this. And you can be a hull down sniper in this. It's really excellent at that too, particularly if you use refined gun, depending on the map. But as I said, with that frontal armor, it really can be tip of the spear, front facing bully, get into the action. It's a good tank. It's definitely worth getting. Nice to have in your collection, of course. It is a kind of a souped up kind of RL44 on steroids, and definitely worth getting. If you like the RL, if you like the Tiger 2, if you like playing American heavies, all of those characteristics are in this tank. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And I guess all that remains for me now to say is pants off.